Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Dr. Ray.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, how are you today?
So far, so good.
So maybe can we start the webinar today, because today we already have Dr. Ray with us. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining with us today in our webinar about the current research problem in finance and its research gap with Dr. Rayendra Khresna Brahmana, Ph.D. from University of Bahrain. During this difficult situation in this pandemic, I hope right now everyone have good condition. Today is an honor that we have Dr. Ray with us as a speaker in this webinar, because it's very important to know about the research problem in finance and research gap in finance as well. It's very useful for the doctoral student to join with this webinar. Before we start this webinar, I would like to introduce that this webinar is a part of 3-in-1 program from Department of Management, Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas Brawijaya. And today, our speaker is Dr. Ray from University of Bahrain. I would like to introduce him to everyone. Dr. Rayendra Khresna Brahmana, Ph.D. He is a senior lecturer right now in College of Business Administration from University of Bahrain, Sakir Kingdom of Bahrain. Dr. Ray, sorry sir, may I call you Dr. Ray?
Or you can call me Ray also, okay?
Oh, okay, thank you. Dr. Ray, born in Indonesia in 1983, and he awarded a Bachelor of Economic in Accounting from Universitas Pajajaran Indonesia with the research title about the influence of crude palm oil pricing to company return on investment and residual income at 2005. And at 2007, he awarded Master of Science in Investment from University of Birmingham in United Kingdom with the thesis title A Comparison of the Week from Efficiency of Southeast Asia Stock Market. And at 2013, he awarded Ph.D. in Behavioral Finance from University Sains Malaysia with the thesis title Psychological Bias Explanation on Malaysia Day of the Week Anomaly. It's an honor that we have Dr. Ray with us, because he also have a lot of career experience in academic and also as an editor in many reputable journals. This is because have a lot of career experience from Dr. Ray. I will list just some of them. Yeah. So Dr. Ray at 2014 until 2020, he is associate managing editor of International Journal of Business and Society. He also at 2014 become a head of international unit industrial and commercialization in Faculty of Economics and Business University Malaysia Sarawak. Dr. Ray also become a senior lecturer at that time at 2014 until 2021, senior lecturer at University Malaysia Sarawak. And right now, he start from 2021. He is a senior lecturer in University of Bahrain. Dr. Ray also ever become a senior advisor for Big Alpha ID financial education startup. Dr. Ray have experience as a Director of Unimas Business Economic and Finance Forecasting Center from University Malaysia Sarawak. He also ever be a head of international unit, industrial and commercialization in Faculty of Economic and Business University Malaysia Sarawak. According to the academic experience, Dr. A have a lot of supervise a lot of students, and until now there is a ex-student that already graduated from a doctoral degree and still have one ongoing student in this degree, in this PhD study. For master degree, already have a 4 graduate student, and from MBA student already have 17 student. Yeah, that's a lot of student. Yeah, and regarding related with the publication, Dr. Ray also have a very good high age index in Scopus and in Google Scholar, because in total he has 56 document, 56 journal article that already published in journal indexed by Scopus. The H index in Scopus is 5 and H index in Google Scholar is 12. And Dr. Ray also published some journal article in the high-ranking journal. He has some journal they publish in ABDC list with the A ranking. It's very difficult to get in A ranking, and he already have some of them in the A ranking journal. Yeah, congratulations, sir. It's very good and high ranking journal in ABDC list. Yeah, Dr. Ray also published in the B ranking journal in ABDC list. So today is a very good opportunity for us that we can learn from the expert about the research, particularly the research in finance, because Dr. Ray have a lot of experience in the research publication and everything related with finance, science in finance. Okay, maybe I will not talk too much today, because we want to know a lot about the research gaps and also the research publication in finance from Dr. Ray. So Dr. Ray, times is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Ida. Yep. Anyway, thank you for everyone, especially for the Faculty of Economic and Business for inviting me for this 3-in-1 program. It's a big honor for me. Yeah, I have consult with actually Bu Risna about this program. So if there are two things that we have to highlight first. First, that if it's too fast and then you want me to repeat it again, feel free to do so. And then if you have questions, which is very hard for you to deliver it in English, feel free also to deliver it in Indonesia. And if you want me to reply you in Indonesia, feel free also to tell me so, because I don't want the language barrier make the communications becomes very difficult, something like that. So yeah, anyway, thank you for Bu Ida also to introduce myself. Let me share first my screen, then we can talk a little bit more about myself later on. So yeah, so actually the topics comes from me, and when Ibu Risna message me and ask me what kind of topic do you want to talk about, this topic, and so on and so forth. So we have a discussion. So I asked her what kind of problem faced by the students, especially the master student and the doctoral student. And then actually the problem that faced by the student is almost similar like what we face when we are pursuing our PhD. And don't be worried, every PhD candidate will face the same problem. The good thing is, in today period or today era, which is like the new PhD candidate since or maybe since 2014, it's quite different with what we face in early 2000 or maybe even in 1990s or 1980s. I give you example in my period when we have I pursue my PhD. I have to change my topic after 1 year. Why? Because I just realized, not I just realized, my supervisor or my supervisory committee just realized my topic is not up to a PhD topic. So I have traveled for 2 or 3 international conference. I made one scopus paper from that, and then up to the extent the supervisory committee, my supervisor and the co-supervisor, told me that this is not good enough as a PhD. Why? Because the research problem is not there, especially up to the PhD level. And this is very common in a PhD journey or in doctoral journey. So I got surprised that time, and then I have to reset everything from zero. But from the experience, then I implement to my students so they will not face the same problem like what I face. I give you one example. Later on, we're going to discuss about it. For example, if you do the proper way in thesis writing or in the dissertations writing, it will take 1 or 2 years only to find or tune in the research problem, the real research problem up to the PhD level, 1 to 2 years. And that's why not to wasting your 1 to 2 years, there's have how to say, we have to have find a way or strategy to shorten that 1 to 2 years, so you can have a good research problem, then we can have a good thesis and dissertation or dissertations. So that's why I choose this topic. So I don't want all the student will face the same problem like what I face. And like what Ibu Ida already told all of us just now, I think I have 8 PhD students graduated. 2 of them graduated in 2.5 years. So it's not 3 years. It's not graduate on time. So one student, even that she has submitted after her 26 months. But based on our regulations, you cannot graduate before 30 months. I will share what is my strategy on her. Of course, I have another student graduated after 5 or 6 years. So I will also will tell you, or I will share to you what will be why some student can graduate, let's say 2.5 years, and some student graduate 5 to 6 years. And actually the answer is about the research problem. So this webinar is more like sharing knowledge, and I hope that maybe it can be implemented to you. I hope so. So if you have questions regarding it, or you're confused with what is the process about it, so please let me know. You can put on the chat box. So yeah, that's my introductions, very long introductions. So let me introduce myself again. Yeah, this is my research publications. I don't want to talk about it. And then I prefer to talk about the Twitter part, because this Twitter part will be related to what we're going to talk today. Many of, you know, it's a, for me, it's like a generation gap. The millennial generations, they prefer to use social media as the to get new informations, rather than our generations. We prefer to go to like the conventional way, or the best social media for us in our generation, those who born in 1980s 1970s, is Facebook. and most of us using the Facebook is for personal things. And if you still remember, starting from 2014, the usage of Facebook is shifted to more like a political things. But for me, there are another platform that really good for us for the research gap, which is the Twitter. So I hope that all of you have a Twitter account, then I will let you know why it's very important when you want to find a research problem. So this is I was a senior lecturer in University Malaysia Sarawak until this year. I changed my affiliations for personal reasons, and then but I'm still managing editor for International Journal of Business and Society, Scopus Q3. All right, still until today. So what we got, well, how we start this webinar, I will tell you. I will start it with the definitions about research gap. I think as before we start this one, can you give me, not put me, can you give me your research title or your research topic on the chat box so I can use it later on as the example? So you can put on the chat box there. For example, you can no need, if you want to introduce yourself, it's also okay. But for example, you can put your topic is astronaci and what financial forecasting, and then you put on the chat box like that, and then I will take it as an example for our discussions today, and then we're going to use it to discuss or to questions about your research gap on this today webinar. Of like Hanifa Benun, that's one example. So if during my presentations, please feel free to put on the chat box so you can use it as the example later on. Thank you. So yeah, back again, what is research gap? Research gap is a content that later on, or not in the letter, you will use it for your problem statement or to motivate your study. So I always say to my student, research gap is a problem that motivates the study because has not been answered. And when our supervisory committee or our examiner asks, what is your originality of study? What is your novelty of your study? Most likely we talk about our research gap. Without a research gap, then we can say that you don't have novelty, you don't have the originality. There are many type of research gap. In my personal opinion, I divide research gap into three type of research gap. One, we call it as theoretical gap. The other one is literature gap, and the other one is empirical gap. So we have theoretical, and then we have literature, and then we have empirical gap. And in a study or in your dissertations or in your research paper or in your thesis, at least you have to have one of it. It's not necessarily you have to have all of it, but you just need one of it. Either you have the theoretical gap, you have the research gap, literature gap, or you have the empirical gap. So what it means by gap? I always tell to my student not make your life so difficult and then think too much and then make life, just keep it simple. As we know that gap is about difference, right? It's about the difference. Like what we face today in the pandemic, they say about physical distancing. Physical distancing means there's a distance between myself and yourself at least in 1 meter or 6 feet. There's a gap. So the gap is 6 feet. So in research gap is there's a distance or there's a difference from one research to another research. It can be a theoretical gap. It can be a literature gap. It can be an empirical gap. So I use these illustrations to define what is a research gap. For example, there is a theory A, and theory B, which is contradict each other. For example, theory A said, if you eat a lot, you will become fat. Theory B said, if you eat a lot, you become slim. So there's a gap. Why? Theory A said, eat a lot make you fat. The other one said, eat a lot make you slim. Or theory A said, if you sleep a lot, you will become happy. Or theory B said, if you sleep a lot, it will make you sad. So there's a contradictions between two theories. Another kind of research gap is the difference between theory and empirical. For example, the theories say that during a crisis, like during the pandemic, like the COVID-19, all stock market will fall. Or during the COVID-19 pandemic, all business collapse. I give you example of neoclassical theory. Neoclassical theory will say that if there is, or the growth endogenous theory will say that if there is a crisis, if there's an economic crisis, health crisis, it will make problem to the business. However, the empirical or the anecdotal evidence show it differently. Why? We can show that in the empirical finding, some business survived during pandemic, or we can say that some stock market survived in the pandemic. For example, like our stock market in Indonesia during the period of May until November 2020, the trend of market is not decreasing but increasing. Meanwhile, according to the theory, that stock market supposedly decreasing, but why they increasing? Or as if you follow the news of Telkom, our in Indonesia, Telkom Indonesia, they have increasing profit. But in the theory, supposedly Telkom doesn't receive any good income. Supposedly they will go bankrupt, for example. So another research gap is the theories say one thing, the empirical finding or the anecdotal evidence, I will tell you, and I have to emphasize anecdotal evidence. Why? It's not necessarily have to be empirical findings. It can be an anecdotal evidence. So the theory says one thing, but the empirical findings will tell you another things. Another example is empirical versus empirical. I give you example. One findings in the stock market from Narayan 2020 published in Finance Research Letter argue that during COVID-19, stock market in developed stock market bullish or increasing. However, there's another findings show from the Latin America show that the stock market decreasing. Or there's a research showing that during the pandemic, airlines industry, restaurant, cafeteria, tourism destinations face problem. Another example, and then however, there's a research shown from Australia. They show that it's not decreasing, it's increasing. So there's a contradictions between two empirical findings. So this is what we call as a research gap, and then we can choose one of it. Either you want to have this type of research gap, or this one, or this part. Indeed, you can also choose two of it, or you can choose three of it. It depends on how deep you want to discuss your research gap. If you ask an editor, a journal editor, for myself, I don't mind if there's contradictions between theory only, or contradictions between theory and empirical or anecdotal evidence. It's okay, or even empirical and empirical. It doesn't matter, as long as you have one of it. The problem is that many of research, many of dissertations, many of theses, we do not discuss, or at least we do not focus on our research gap. When we do not show our research gap, we lose the problem statement, we lose the power of our research. It will be looks like a very cheap research. So it's it's the same things like when I ask you which vaccine is better, AstraZeneca, Sinovac, or Pfizer, or Moderna, and so on and so forth. So if I'm from AstraZeneca company, I have to show that why my vaccine is better than the others. It's the same things like we do it for our dissertations or our thesis. We have to show also how good or how best, not how good, how best our research compared to the others, how we contribute to body of knowledge. And another things that from my experience that I received from many papers in International Journal of Business and Society is that what we think that how to say, when many research paper fail to show that how your research contribute to body of knowledge. All right, if your research is more to the practical or for the policy things, or is maybe only applied for one province or one municipality, maybe it's good for policy paper, but not as a research paper. I will discuss about it later on. I will give you the example what I'm talking about. Why so many research that we receive in International Journal of Business and Society (IJBS), they fail to selling the research gap, and where at the time you fail to sell your research gap, the editor will reject your paper because there's no value how you can contribute to the research, to the body of knowledge. So let's look first about the theoretical gap between theory A and theory B. All right. So this theoretical gap is the connotations of the theory. I give you example: stakeholder versus agency theory. Stakeholders say that I think if you are from Faculty of Economy and Business, you let me introduce again what is stakeholder theory and agency theory. I will not assume that all of you from finance. So there's a theory, a very famous theory called as stakeholder theory. Stakeholder theory state that if the owner will choose the manager, and this manager will do his or her best to optimize or to maximize the shareholder wealth. So when let's say I'm the owner of a restaurant, I own a restaurant, I choose one manager, and then I believe this manager will help me to run the restaurant up to the extent this restaurant will got maximize profit. That is stakeholder theory. However, there's also an agency theory saying that manager actually they have their own interests. Most likely, they will not do what the owners say, but they will do their self-interest. Why? Because they want to maximize their wealth instead of the shareholder wealth. So theory A said manager will make profit, which is stakeholder theory. However, agency theory said that the manager will not do so. What they will do is they will pursue their self-interest for themselves. So there is an argument between two theory, and this is what we call as one of research gap. Okay, so in the corporate governance research, in the strategic management research, this two theory is very common applied to write the research gap. It's very common, especially for those who are doing corporate governance or doing strategic management. You will use these two connotations between stakeholder theory and agency theory. I give you example. One theory, one paper for Hillman and Haynes is in Strategic Management Journal 2010 or 2011. I forgot the year. It's about CEO power and strategic choice. CEO power and strategic choice. So this paper, when they want to show a research gap, they said that in the first paragraph of their paper, they will say that, okay, stakeholder theory said a manager will do their best and then they will make a good strategic choice to maximize the profit of the company. However, agency costs say that the manager will not do their best, the manager will pursue their self-interest, and then they will not make a good strategic choice unless the CEO has a big power. So from that, they make one research about CEO power and strategic choice. So why? Because there is a gap between stakeholder theory and agency theory. One of the example. Another example that I want to show you is the EMH and the prospect theory. EMH is one theory very famous in finance, efficiency market hypothesis, Pharma 1964. State that market will be efficient. As simple as that. Of course, in the full statement of EMS, saying that the price will adjust fast to respond to new informations. But to make it short, just remember, market will be efficient. So if the economy is decreasing, market will decreasing. If the market is good, the economy is good, the market will be good, EMH. And then there's come one theory from Kahneman and Tversky, who got a Nobel Prize in 2005, called as prospect theory. Prospect theory, Kahneman, Tversky, 1979. Prospect theory by Kahneman and Tversky is saying that no, market will not be efficient due to the psychology of the investor. So there is a possibility market will not follow the information. Why? Because the psychology. This explains why, I give you example like the cryptocurrency currently. If you are doing research about cryptocurrency, if you are doing research about branding, not branding, impulsive buying, sorry, not branding, impulsive buying, you're doing research about herding, usually we'll use prospect theory. Why? Because the decisions to buy is due to the psychology biases. And this is another research gap example to test between two theory, between EMH and prospect theory. Or another example is trade-off and pecking order. Trade-off say that when a manager want to choose between equity or debt, they will make the optimum decisions. Meanwhile, pecking order say that no, manager will never make a trade-off. They will find the cash first. After they go the cash, they go to the bank. After go to the bank, they go to we call as the loan, and then the fixed income securities from the money market, and then they go to the equity. So there's an order. So this is what we call as research gap. So when your research is about capital structure, you want to talk about optimization of your capital structure, you will make this two research gap. And of course, in other research area, it will be, you can have the same thing. I give you example if you are doing in strategy management or in marketing or in organizational behavior. There's a theory called theory of planned behavior by Fishburne and Eichen, right? Fishburne and Eichen say that the intentions to buy or intentions to purchase is determined by perceived behavioral control, subjective norm, and attitude toward behavior. However, this TPB is contradict with the neoclassical in economy. Why? Intentions to buy is simply because of utility maximizations. So there's another research gap. Another type of research gap is to contradict between theory and empirical finding. Theory and empirical finding. For example, the EMA said, as I already told you earlier, said that market is efficient. However, the empirical finding or the anecdotal evidence show there's IPO over or under reactions. Or another theory from accounting called positive accounting theory. Positive accounting theory said that when the director report their informations, they will choose the best accounting practice. They will choose the best accounting practice. However, as we know, all of us know, there are many accounting fraud, there are many earning managements, there are many cases of tax evasions, tax planning, which is contradict with the positive accounting. So if I'm writing a paper about earning management, right? If you ask me if I'm writing a paper about earning management or tax evasions, tax planning, tax avoidance, accounting fraud, I will, or about disclosure, yeah, CSR disclosure, ESG disclosure, corporate risk disclosure, and many type of disclosures, I will, in my first paragraph or in my problem statement, I will write about positive accounting theory versus earning management or whatever is the unethical behavior conducted by the director. Why? Because positive accounting theories say that manager or director will do their best for accounting practices. But the evidence or the anecdotal evidence show that how many fraud in Indonesia, how many fraud, for example, tax planning or tax avoidance in Indonesia, or maybe tax evasions in Indonesia, how many cases of earning management or white collar crime in Indonesia. So you can show that evidence and then the contradict the positive accounting theory. There's a research gap. So another research gap is about from the empirical or anecdotal evidence, which is you can find an interesting phenomenon like the sleepy stock. Sleepy stock is the stock that sleep through the time. Some people said it's a dead stock. Or maybe there's a phenomenon of why so many infrastructure company in Indonesia now facing the financial distress, from financial distress. Or maybe we can discuss the phenomenon of the green financing, or simply maybe about the tendency of retail investor go to cryptocurrency, and so on and so forth. So you can also start from the interesting phenomena. Another example from this type of empirical finding is maybe a mixed finding. For example, there's a mixed finding in political connections research. Some say not significant, some say positive, some say negative. Maybe it's due to the transactional versus relational political connection. Or maybe mixed finding in family firms. Some say that, like, if you are following if your research is family firms, there's two school of thought, right? If you are from Anderson and Rips, especially from the paper of Anderson and Rips 2003, they will say that the manager in family firm will do alignment. So family firm will have better performance compared than non-family, Anderson and Rips 2003. However, there's another school of thought from Crescent et al. 2000. They will say that no, family firms is even worse compared to the non-family. So there's a mixed finding. So this is the research gap that you can sell as your story. If you are writing a paper, write this as your first and second paragraph of your introductions. First and second paragraph of your introduction. And your second and your third paragraph is how you contribute to the research gap, how you will tackle that gap. For example, there's a stakeholder and agency problem. So how you tackle it? Maybe it's because of the CEO compensations. One example. Why the trade-off then picking, or why some company, they will make choice between debt financing and equity financing. Some company, they will go first to the internal cash, bank, money market, and then the last one is equity market. What's like that? Or you can say that because of the CEO characteristic, or maybe because the institutional setting of the country. This explains why many company in Japan rely heavily on loans instead of equity. Why? Because equity market in Japan is not as developed like in US. Why? In Indonesia, most of the company will do packing order. Maybe because in Indonesia, the debt market or the equity market is not as advanced from other market. So that's why many of the company in Indonesia, they will go pecking order. They will check their cash flow first, and then they go to the bank. If the bank not giving them money, then they will find a way go to the money market or bond market or equity market, stock market. So when you talk about research gap in your first and second paragraph of your or your article, or maybe on your problem statement in your thesis, then your second and your third paragraph, you have to mention how you will fill in the gap. Okay, so I repeat one more time, this research gap you have to showcase as your first and or second paragraph. Okay, first or second paragraph. Some people will write it up to 2 paragraphs is okay. Some researcher will write it only 1 paragraph is okay. But the following paragraph you have to write about how you tackle the research gap, and which is how you tackle that research gap is your research. So the editor or the examiner will find out, oh, okay, your novelty of research is there's an argument between 2 theories. Oh, okay, your novelty is about there is argument between theory and anecdotal evidence or empirical finding. And then you fill in the gap. So it has a flow when you write it. So it will be much better. It will be much better later on in your thesis, dissertations, or your research article. I repeat so many times already. Your first and second paragraph, make sure you have to have the the research gap in the first and second paragraph. Following of it on the second and the third paragraph, you have to fill in, or you have to write how you tackle that research gap, which is your research. So if your examiner asks you, okay, what is actually your novelty of research? What is your originality of your research? You can say that, all right, stakeholder theory say that, or the manager will do the best. However, agency theory said there will be a self-interest. And then my research want to bridge this theory. Maybe the explanations due to this research gap is because of the compensation, or maybe because the tenure of the CEO, or maybe because the educations or the experience of the manager, or maybe because the economic conditions that faced by the company. There's a research telling that there's a research finding show that the CEO will be more to agency theory during the good season. So that if there's no crisis, the cash flow is really good, they will go more to agency theory. But if during crisis or pandemic, they will go to the stakeholder theory. So this is the example of how to write the research gap and how to find the research gap. And again, I repeat one more time, is either you have one of it, or you can have two of it, or you can have three of it. All right. So this is how you write your research gap. Okay, rather than keep listening me bubbling here, I'll give you a practice about it. I give you a practice about it. Yeah, I show you this. Can you tell me that this one is theory versus theory, or theory versus empirical, or or empirical versus empirical? I give you like 2 or 3 minutes to write it, to read it first. Okay, I give you two minutes to read about these practices. Okay. All right. So after you read this, can you put on the chat box, in your opinion, this is theory versus theory, or theory versus empirical, or empirical versus empirical? From Madam Hanifa say that theory versus theory. Okay, another one. Anyone? Theory versus empirical. Theory. Theory empirical. Okay. Theory. All right. Yeah. So this is the example. Thank you for the answers. So as you can see here, this is actually theory versus theory. This is the first paragraph. So on one side, the proponent of natural resource-based view theory, one theory, right, said that environmental blah blah blah, blah and so on means that good environment make a good firm performance. On another side, neoclassical theory proponent address marginal abatement costs. So as you can see here, it's theory versus theory. And this is the research gap. Where's the research gap? One theory argue about environmental make a good performance. Another theory said environmental performance make bad firm performance. So one theory and another theory. All right. So this is an example of theory versus theory. And the second paragraph here is the one that I just told you that this is your research. So one reasons for this mixed finding may be due to the technology used in mitigating environmental costs. So this research is actually will talk about technology use. Why? Some company, they have good environmental but bad performance. Some company, good environment and good performance. Oh, maybe it's because of the technology used by them. So this is the example that I just explained to you. The following paragraph will talk about your research. This is your research gap. This is your selling point. This is how you enrich the body of knowledge. If I'm the editor and then, oh, okay, I know this research want to do this, so it's good. And then this is your research, how you tackle the research. This introduction I take from my paper published in Business Strategy and the Environment. The impact factor is 10.3. The impact factor is 10.3, the Business Strategy and the Environment, the ABDCA. So one of the example about theory versus theory, this is the gap. All right. Okay, we go to the practice 2. Can you tell me this is theory versus theory versus empirical, or empirical versus empirical? I give you 1 and 2 minutes again. Oh, okay, thank you. So already 1 minute. Yep, the answer is correct. It's empirical and theory. Why? As you can see here, they mention theory here, upper echelon theory proposed top management, blah, 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 blah. And then they said that in Malaysia, West, they just, I read about the Malaysia. This one. This is quite intriguing considering the case of narcissistic CEO is popular in emerging countries such as Malaysia, blah, 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 blah. So again, this is example of empirical versus theory. Another example, of course, I saw you about, this is example about empirical versus empirical. This is a very famous paper from Michael Dowling and Brian Lucy, published in Journal of Finance. Wait, I forgot. I think it's in either in IRFA or in JFE. Michael Dowling and Brian Lucy, which is my main reference for my PhD. I think 2004 paper. I forgot. Yeah, Michael Dowling and Brian Lucy paper about weather and stock market. You know, the weather, cuaca. In Indonesia, we call it as cuaca, right? Weather and stock market. They will say that this is the finding. Some said, some research show that weather will affect the biorhythms of a person. And when it affects the biorhythms of a person, it will impact the mood of a person. This one. And meanwhile, in equity pricing, it involves decisions from a person, and that decisions, it depends on the mood, correct? So for example, if you have a bad mood, usually you have a bad decisions making. If you're a good mood, you will have a rational decision making. So this is empirical and empirical. That's why on the 1, 2, and 3, and the 4th, then Michael Dowling and Brian Lucy show what is the research all about. The research about is whether there's a relationship between Irish equity return and the mood proxy, which is cloud cover, rain, humidity, geomagnetic storm, SAD, daylight saving, lunar phase, and Friday 13. Yeah, actually, my research, I think, I still remember last time, if you know, I think in your faculty, you have Pak Noval, right? Pak Noval is, I think, Brawijaya and Bu Risna. If you still remember that, they asked me during my proposal defense, in our university, the proposal defense can be attended by all students, and all students can ask questions in our in University of Science Malaysia. All students can ask. I still remember last time Pak Noval asked me a questions, what is the relationship between weather and lunar affect the stock market? Until today, I still remember that questions, because it made me think how I convince him and the audience that this makes sense, and this is my main reference. And this research, they do not sell about the theory. Why? Because the theory is actually psychological theory, and some finance people, some finance lecturer or scholar, they do not like if psychology theory applied in the finance in finance research. That one we're going to talk in another day. So it makes me think that, okay, if a doctor, a professor, a fellow of PhD candidate do not buy my argument about why weather, lunar phase can affect stock market, something wrong with my research. So then I have to follow this paper. Then I will tell that, okay, this is the scheme. When there's a hot temperature or hot weather, it will make people more aggressive because the biorhythms. And when you have it's very hot, it makes people more easily to angry, more aggressive. And then because you're aggressive, you have a bad mood. Or the lunar phase, when there's a full moon is in Indonesia bulan purnama, in the full moon, people tend to be more aggressive. There's one research from Cunningham 1978. It's very old paper. It's the first paper studying about the effect of lunar phase to the stock market. Not to stock market, to the hospitality industry. So Cunningham 1978 paper is actually a marketing paper. So he studied about she studied about how is the waiter and waitress in the restaurant during lunar phase. So how that research sell the research gap? They show that okay, empirical findings show that during lunar phase people become more aggressive, blah, and so on and so forth. Therefore, my research is I want to investigate whether lunar phase will affect the decisions or the hospitality of waiter and waitress. So I do the same things, but mine is stock market. And this remind me to the, if you guys, I mean, if you, all of you following the news about the Astronaci and the stock return, there's a very famous person, I forgot his name, just graduated for the Astronaci and stock return. And then there's a huge debate in Twitter. And surprisingly, I just make one thread about it, and then it become also very huge impact. Oh, thank you, Gemma Guryadi. Thank you, Pak Stefanus Paulus. So, because one of my friend tell me that DM me, give me a DM. Ray, have you followed this news? And then I explore about the news, what's going on, and then people become so, some supporting, some against, because they don't believe the Astronaci affect the stock market for the forecasting. Then I make a thread in Twitter about it, and surprisingly, people retweet that thread in 100 times, because many people do not believe how Astronaci can affect the stock market. So if you want, with all respect, that the problem with this paper, this thesis or the paper that published in Sinta 6, Sinta 6, Sinta 6, the problem is maybe the methodological. The problem with that research is actually because tadi siapa, what's his name, Gema, he cannot sell the research gap. That's all. For me, if he can sell the research gap, and he can show the methodology is robust, then it's okay. That's it. The problem is, this also will apply to all of you. At the time, you cannot show your research gap, and you cannot show your methodology is good. You will face the same thing. People will question your research. People will say your research is so cheap. People will say your research is not a research. So, yeah, so when you, thank you for the information. Yeah, that's, if you want to know what is Astronaci, you can see on the comment, sorry, on the chat box. So you have to learn from the case of this Gema with the research about Astronaci and stock market. Why? Because you will face the same thing also. At the time, you cannot show the research gap, or you cannot show, and you cannot show your methodology is good. People will also question your research. The same time when I first time or the second time, there's, first time proposal defense, people question how come weather and lunar phase affect stock market. Okay, so this is the thing that we have to learn later on, and this is why I told you from the beginning, research gap is important for your research. It's very important for your research. Okay, very important for your research. Okay, why cannot? Okay, so this is the example. So how it start? Okay, Ray, you keep telling about what is research gap, how and then how to write the research gap, how to show the originality of the thesis or the research. But how it start? How we start the research gap? That's the problem, right? Okay, now I know what is research gap. I know research gap, it can be theory versus empirical, and empirical. But how we start it? I keep telling this to my student. There are two type of PhD student. One is the very perfectionist student, a perfectionist student that always start the idea from him or herself. So for him or her, they want to, or he or she want to pursue one interesting topic. I give you example of the astronaci just now, the astrology and Fibonacci on the stock market. Or maybe he think that about what else? The music and decision choice, or about the woman empowerment in entrepreneurships during COVID-19, or any types that the ideas pop up from your head. Is it wrong? No. That's why I told you there's two types of students. One is a perfectionist that they have an ideas and then they want to test it. So if you are this type of student that are perfectionist, which is you have an idea, especially I bet that many of you here, not many, some of you here maybe come from industry background. You're from practitioner, which is you are engaged with the reality more often than the academicians, and then you see problems clearer clearer than the academicians, and then ideas pop up on your mind, and then you want to do that as your dissertations or your research. If you are in this type of perfectionist student, the another step that you have to do is you have to check, is it your idea is in line or aligned with prior knowledge or not? Is it have been done by others or not? Is it important for body of knowledge or not? Why? Sometimes what is important for practitioner is not important for academic. The same also, what sometimes is important for academics is not important for practitioner, correct? So then there's another problem appear if you are this type of student, because you have an idea and then it will be very hard for you to find the theory to support your idea. It will be very hard for you to find knowledge or empirical findings to support your idea. I give you an example of one student in 2010 or 2011 in during my PhD. He's from Iran. He want to do research about neuro leaderships, because yeah, it's from his personal background. His son has autism. His son has autism, but he observed from the autism of his son make interesting leadership value. So he made one idea: why not I test a neuro leaderships on leadership's decisions? The problem is that on that year, neuro leadership is not yet supported by many theory, not many empirical findings. So the only way that he has to do it is he has to do it by qualitative. So when he want to do qualitative, then he has to really understand what is neuro leadership, which is he has to learn about neuroscience, he has to learn about psychology, and he has to learn about leaderships in that year. So due to this problem, and then he has to change his topic. Why? Because he's come from ideas pop up from his mind, which is really good. For me, it's a really good idea. Can you imagine neuro leaderships and then using the MRI testing about the what the brainwave to the leadership decisions and something like that? I'm not sure also. This is a brilliant idea. But when he want to go pursue this topic, he has problem with to find the theory to support it, the prior empirical findings to support it, and everything. Why? Because his background is marketing, but he want to do something about neuroscience plus psychology plus leadership in that period. So because of this part, and usually the perfectionist student will graduate late, will graduate longer than the yeah than their peers. What which is I call it them is as the practical one. So another student type I call as a practical student. What they do is they find a main reference first. When they find a main reference, they check it whether this reference has been done by many research or not. So they start from reading first, not coming from the idea. Okay, it's not coming from idea. Their idea comes after they read. So there's another factor here. They read first and then they come out with the ideas. And this type of student, in my experience, they can graduate faster. Why? They just need to benchmark. Of course, in terms of quality wise, we know that those who have ideas, the originality will be much better compared than those who do benchmark. I give one example. One my student doing about student loan. So in Malaysia, there is one loan from government we call as student loan. So if you want to go to university, you can take a student loan. After you graduate from the university, you have to pay the loan. You have to repay the loan, the student loan. And this student loan is become a big issue in Malaysia because many of 70%, not many, 70 to 80% of the borrower, after they graduate, they never pay the student loan, and the loan become bigger and bigger. And then she want to know that why this problem appear, because actually she's part of the student loaner. And then he has to check about financial literacy, hyperbolic discounting, loss aversions, and so on and so forth, impulsive saving, precautionary saving, and so on. So see, it takes her like 2 years to settle about the theory. Graduate. Publish, good publish in Q1. Meanwhile, I have another student that is a perfectionist student. She has to do the experimental study instead of survey or secondary. She do experimental study. She did experimental study, and then yeah, graduated. But after 5 years, I have another student graduated in 2.5 years, and now in Singapore. She found one paper published in Journal of Corporate Finance. Published in Emerging Market Review about diversification strategy. And as if you are from strategic management, or if you have learned strategic management, we have 4 types of strategy, right? You have diversifications, you have product development, you have retrenchment, right? And you have merger and acquisition. So instead of diversifications, she chose another strategy which is called as retrenchment, or we call as defensive strategy. So the paper, her research for PhD is similar with what published in Emerging Market Review, but in the Emerging Market Review is talk about what we call it is diversifications and excess value, or firm performance. We call it as firm performance. Her research is about he changed the diversifications to, I repeat, he changed the diversifications to what so-called as retrenchment strategy. What she did in that paper, in the diversifications and firm performance paper, she benchmarked it. That paper used internal market hypothesis theory. She used that theory. That paper also used the discussions about agency theory versus internal market hypothesis for the research gap. She replicated with the context of retrenchment strategy, and then it make her research faster. This is why I told you after 26 months, she finished with everything. She published with 6 Scopus journal, no predatory. Because my style is, if you are my student, I hate the predatory journal. You have to publish in good journal. He published in the property management. What else? The management, accounting and finance, if I'm not mistaken, and many journal, the good journal in Sage, in Emerald, and in Springer. So there are two types of student, and then you have to identify yourself. Are you the perfectionist student, or are you the practical student? Which one is the best? None is the best. You have to understand yourself first. If you have an idea that you want to test it. But when you want to find the research gap, when you have the ideas, you have to find first the research gap. And you have to explore by yourself. The practical student, right? The practical student, when they want to find a research gap, they just need to benchmark from a paper that just published. As easy as that. Which one is the best? None is the best. It's up to you which one that you want. Being a practical is not wrong. Being a perfectionist is also not wrong. But if you have an idea and you want to make the research gap from your idea, you have to find first a research gap from your idea. Is it your idea has a gap or not? To find there's a gap or not, then you have to check again, right? You have to check, is there any contentions between theory, or contention between theory and empirical, or contention between empirical and empirical? And here where I go back to the I go back to your example. Okay. For example, from Hanifa Benunur, financial innovation. I'm not sure. You can put on the comment what kind of research that you want to do about financial innovations. There are many types of financial innovations, right? So you can put on the chat box. I go first to Mr. Brian. Strategic management and change management with automation innovations, dynamic performance. Okay, let's go to Mr. Brian first. For example, if I am Mr. Brian, that I want to do about strategic management and change management with automations innovation. So there are, for me, there are only two ways to do this, either theory versus theory or theory versus empirical. If I'm doing theory versus theory, so strategic management and change management with automatic innovations, either you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know what theory that you use, but if I am you, I will use RBV and endogenous. And I don't know whether your unit of analysis is individual but I don't think it's individual. This must be corporate level, right? So yeah, if you're corporate level, you can do the endogenous growth theory. You can do the RBV if it strategic change management. Yeah, you can do that. So if I am you, I will show first what is the problem with the change strategic management, the current strategic management. What is that? What? But not in Indonesia, but the body of knowledge of strategic management. What is going on in the strategic management literature or the change management literature currently? What is the hot topic about it? What kind of theory that still being debated? What kind of theory still being discussed, or what kind of empirical thing being discussed? And then you can add that maybe the automations innovations can be the originality of your research, the novelty of your research, something like that. And the dynamic performance, I also do not know. Maybe you can Miss or Madam Dewi Narirati, you can also put what kind of dynamic performance that you want. Okay, that's really good.
Pardon?
That's really good. Okay, okay. For Madam Rona also, I will discuss. Okay, let's discuss one by one with from Mr. or Madam Hanifa Benunur. Financial innovations like the digital finance service. Okay, so in digital economics, especially in digital finance, there are two approaches. You you go by the firm level or you go to the individual level, right? I have to discuss this first thing. If you go like looking at your title, I can predict that actually, I predict that you are doing individual level. Financial
Yes.
innovation.
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Individual. Yes.
oh, okay. Oh, madam, okay, individual level. So if you want to using platform to payment, there are two approaches. Sorry, two school of thought about it. One school of thought is from TAM, Technology Acceptance Model, by Fekantes, or maybe Utaut from the Davis, which is the intentions to use of the platform. For example, the I don't know in Indonesia what you call the Link Aja, right? Link Aja or OVO or whatever it is. In Malaysia, we have Sarawak Pay and Samsung Pay and so on. So maybe if you are talking about the intention to use and the actual use, so you can use that theory. Okay, that's one thing first. So the problem is with the student or the researcher, when you're engaged with technology-based intentions, you still stick with the TPB or the decomposed TPB, theory plan of behavior of Achan and Fishbein, which is not correct. So my suggestions, you can use the technology acceptance model, Fencantes and Davis for the UTAUT, Unified Theory, UTAUT, Unified Theory of Acceptance and Usage of Technology. That's the theory that usually we use. If I am you, Madam Hanifa, I will use the research gap is theory versus research gap as theory versus empirical. What's the empirical? This digital finance is very happening now, and not you can show the you can show the internet penetrations in Indonesia. You can show that the use of this platform, the Link Aja, the OVO, and so on and so forth in Indonesia. You have to show the anecdotal evidence. All right. So after that, then you can discuss the intentions to use of it. Is it true that what make people want to use the platform, for example? What make people want to make the platform? So if I am Madam Hanifa, I will not use theory versus theory. I will use theory versus empirical. Or I will use my empirical finding first, and then I will say that, okay, to test this anecdotal evidence, I will use UTAUT or TAM, for example. So that's one thing. For Madam Rona, for example, investment decisions and retirement planning. What theory? Oh, there's a lot of theory that for the retirement planning and investment decisions. This is the, okay, TPB is not suitable. This is not for only from Madam Rona, it's for everyone. We have to be careful when we choose the theory. Some theory is not suitable for our research context. So how to know that a theory is really good for our research context? Then you have to really understand the theory. This is why I told you earlier, during my PhD, it takes 1 to 2 years only to find a theory. Why? Because I'm the perfectionist student. I have one idea. I have to find out myself what theory to support mine. So it's a very long journey. Unless you are a practical student, you can benchmark from one paper, you read what theory they use. Like my student just now, in diversifications and firm performance. And from that paper, he know that it used internal market hypothesis and agency theory. So that's it. No need 1 year or 2 years to find a theory. So if you're a perfectionist student, you want to find a theory, you have to be careful. Like theory of planned behavior by Fishbein and Eichen. Fishbein and Eichen theory of planned behavior is more to intentions. So if your research nothing about intentions, I repeat, if your research nothing about intentions, you cannot use TPB. Retirement planning, the school of thought is Anna Maria Lusardi. So you have to follow the Anna Maria Lusardi papers, and there's a theory called a financial literacy theory from Lusardi and who's his name? Mitchell, Oliver Mitchell and Anna Maria Lusardi. What theory they use? Life cycle theory. That's correct. But TPB is not correct. So if I'm Madam Rona, I want to make a research about investment decisions and retirement planning. What should I do? It's very simple. Oh, not very simple. Not very simple. I will do a theory and empirical. You cannot do theory and theory for this topic. But however, please be careful when you want to choose a theory. And my suggestion, but again, this is my suggestion. You can ask your promoter later on. My suggestion is TPB is not suitable for this kind of topic. So this is, so what is the lesson learned? What is the lesson learned from this that I told you before I go to Mr. Denny and Miss Devi, for example? The lesson learned is not everything you have to show the theory and empirical. No, you can choose one of it. And from the all example that given to me now, most of you is actually empirical and theory. But again, be careful when you choose the theory. If you ask me which theory, then you have to explore more, you have to read more. Especially if you do not have the main reference. You do not have the main reference. Okay. So again, let's take another two from Mr. Denny and Madam Devi. It is important to submit our journal to reputable journal because our digital footprint as a teacher will be back if we submit our article to the. Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, this question is, Mr. Denny, I hope you don't mind. Actually, this is my next slide. We'll talk about this. So I will leave this answer. I will not answer it now. We go to the next slide, and then it's actually to answer your questions. That's a really good questions. So yeah, I will tell you the answer. You will know the answer after the next slide. So the last questions, maybe before I continue, is from Madam Devi. Okay, research about corporate governance, intellectual capital on dynamic performance mediated by free cash flow. Oh, okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the thing. With all respect, mediations in panel data is not yet confirmed. I know that some of you will do PLS-SEM, CB-SEM for your mediations in our research of mediations, correct? But do not forget that, I know this is maybe for another type of workshop, but let me tell you this, and then you have to read you have to find out by yourself later on. In a panel data, there will be two problems. One, we call it as individual effect. The other one is the heterogeneity from the individual effect. PLS-SEM and CB-SEM so far still cannot tackle this problem. You can read the paper from Hare himself. You know, if you are PLS-SEM people, you will know who is Hare. Hare and Sarsted, they even make a paper about it. So be careful in choosing a mediations if you are from panel data research. That's one thing that I have to warn you. Why? If your examiner is an econometrics expert, it will be a problem for you to answer the questions later on. The assumptions made in partial least square and the assumptions made in the simultaneous equations, not structural, not SEM, the structural, the simultaneous equation. This one, you also have to learn what is the difference between structural equations and simultaneous equations. Are different, the assumptions. And then you have to make sure you fulfill the assumptions first. If you are still pursuing the mediations in panel data, make sure that the result of the, I'm so sorry if I'm too technical for this. Make sure that your Chow test, your Bruce Pagan LM test, your Hausman fixed test, all are rejected, which is you have to go back to the pool test. Then you can use that. That's one suggestion from me. Or the best way is you can use the two-state least square. The problem is two-state least square is also cannot answering the indirect effect from the X to the Z like what we see in the SEM. But that is the so far is the best one for the mediation. So what lesson learned from what I taught to you? For those who are in finance and accounting, doing data, panel data, having a mediations, be careful with your econometrics model. Currently, I made one paper. I made one systematic literature review paper with several professors about this matter to make sure that what you have to do and what you have to not to do, especially on the mediations effect. Okay, so be careful. That's one thing. Second thing, I haven't discussed about your research gap, right? Those who have mediation, please remember this. I know that choosing a mediations, choosing a moderations, choosing a mediated moderations is one way to showcase your originality or your novelty of research. That's a good strategy. So whenever your examiner asks, what is your novelty? What's your originality? You can say, oh, my novelty or my originality is the moderation, the mediation, or the moderated mediation, or the mediated mediation, and so on and so forth. That's good. However, if you still remember, when you are picking a mediations or picking a moderations, you have to have a theoretical argument behind that. I'll give you an example. Is it true corporate governance has to go to free cash flow first, then they can affect intellectual capital in dynamic performance? I repeat, is it true corporate governance, before he arrives to dynamic performance, he has to go first to free cash flow? That is what we call as mediation. What theory saying that corporate governance cannot have a direct effect to dynamic performance? What theory is stating that? So you have to find first a theory stating that corporate governance cannot go directly to dynamic performance. It has to mediate it by a free cash flow. Which theory is stating that? Right. So you cannot simply just, okay, I want to have mediation. Okay, I want to have moderation. No, it have a theoretical argument about it. Have you found any research showing that corporate governance have an indirect effect to dynamic performance? This is the second problem of mediations. So I'll give you a very simple analogy. When I want to go to Surabaya from Semarang, is it true that if I want to go to, I want to go to Malang from Semarang, is it true that I have to go Semarang to Surabaya first, then go to Malang? Or can I go directly to Malang? The same case. When, right, if you're from my hometown, I give you, I'm from Medan. My father's hometown is one small city called as, I don't know whether you know it. The name is Kabanjahe. So if you want to go to Kabanjahe from Medan, you have to go through a mountainous road, and you have to go through one city called Brastagi. So from Medan, you have to go to Brastagi, then you can arrive in Kabanjahe. And this is what we call as mediation, because I cannot go directly to Kabanjahe. I have to go to Brastagi first, then I can arrive to Kabanjahe. Or I cannot go to Malang directly because I have to go Semarang, Surabaya, dan Malang. The same case, is it corporate governance has to go to free cash flow first, then arrive in dynamic performance? Which theory is stating that? I hope you get what I mean. So if let's say you find a theory to support it, you have find a theory to support that, or empirical evidence to support that corporate governance cannot go directly to dynamic performance. They have to go to free cash flow first. Okay, then you write the research gap from that. That is your research gap. Your research gap will show that theory A say that corporate governance cannot directly influence dynamic performance. It has to go through from characteristic, for example, free cash flow. Then it's your research gap. But again, so those who are doing mediations, your job will be so difficult because you have to make sure, if I'm your examiner, I will ask you I will not ask you about many things. I will ask you a very simple things. Is it true that corporate governance has to go to free cash flow first before arrive in dynamic performance? Or like what the case that I showed you just now, is it true if I'm from Medan, I want to go Kabanjahe, I have to go, can I go direct to Kabanjahe or I have to go to Brastagi first? Or if I'm from Semarang, I want to go to Malang, can I go directly to Malang or I have to go to Surabaya first? Which theory stating that? Which empirical findings stating that? Mediations is a very tough job. It's a good research area. It's a good research for me. In this again, this is my personal value. For me, those who are doing mediation, I have to give them time because it's a really massive things to do. Moderations is very simple, right? Moderation is moderations. Let's say the free cash flow is the moderation. You just need to find that some research say corporate governance positive to dynamic performance. Some research say corporate governance negative dynamic performance. Some say corporate governance has no impact, no effect to dynamic performance. It has to moderate by free cash flow. It's very simple, right? And usually in corporate governance, corporate governance is your moderating, correct? So intellectual capital cannot affect dynamic performance. Why? It depends on the corporate governance. Capital structure cannot affect dynamic performance. Why? It depends on the control and monitoring from the corporate governance. So moderations is very, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's at least relatively easier than mediations, like that. So yeah, that's, I think, yeah, from, I think I understood it. You are my example. After this, I have the PowerPoint for you also. So don't worry, I will answer the questions after this. Okay, that's the thing. That's the case. I just want to showcase to you guys that it's not easy choosing a research gap, right? Especially for those who are perfectionists, which is your idea come like that from your mind. The easiest way is you have to find the benchmark. And why can't it go? Okay, sorry. So how it start? How it start? To finding the ideas is, I will say that you are what you eat. Right? You eat healthy food, you become healthy. You eat fatty food like me, you become fat like me. You eat like me. All right. So when you want to finding ideas, it depends on the references. It depends on your ecosystem in Brawijaya. It depends on the ecosystem of your family and the habits that you have. Why family is matter? You have to find someone that you can talk with. If you still remember my research about the weather, the full moon, and so on, I talked to my sister and my mother until she understand what I'm saying. So I tell her that, Mom, do you believe that temperature can affect stock return during my PhD? And then she said, how come weather can affect the stock return? So I tell her my idea. when she convinced with my idea, then my idea is good. The same case with astronaut. Why people debating about the astronaut? Because how this guy deliver it maybe not convincing enough. At the time you're not convincing enough, people will question your ideas. Okay, so if you have friends, if you have this is the wrong thing. Never, do not only discuss your thesis with your supervisor or your promoter. If I know this is a pandemic time, maybe hard for you. If not pandemic, you can go outside, for example, invite your friend and then tell them, hey, do you know that I have an idea about this? What you think about this? Does it make sense? Don't ask them whether it's correct or not. Just ask them whether it makes sense or not. Is it make sense? Investment make your retirement planning good, right? Is it make sense if I invest good, retirement planning good? Is it make sense the what just now innovations? If you have automotive, what just now I forgot the innovation something, and then is it make sense? Not correct or not? Of course, my mom cannot know whether it's correct or not. She's not my promoter. She's not my reviewer, not my examiner. She didn't read my thesis. So just ask, does it make sense? What do you think about it? Right. So have a good ecosystem, have a good habits. Habits means that I still remember if I'm a very narcissistic person, and then I take the comment from my peers hardly, then I will not improve my thesis. As I told you again just now, I still remember, even until today, I remember during that time, because you're from Brawijaya, I don't know whether Pak Noval still in Brawijaya or not. I still remember a question from Pak Noval, Ray, why weather can affect stock return? Why not you just say the astrology affect the stock return? And then when we discuss, Pak Noval not yet convinced. I think Pak Noval already forget about this. And then make me think, oh yeah, if I can convince my peers, how can I convince the editor, the reviewer, the examiner, right? So that's the thing you have to understand. So why I say you are what you eat, it because what you read, how your ecosystem, what is your habit, it will affect the ideas and how the soundness of your ideas. I give you one example. The reference book. We all respect, it's good you have a local author for your book. You can buy it. I know some good local author in Indonesia. Just buy it. Pak Imam Ghazali, for example, is good. But doesn't mean that you only have a local author books. You have to have another textbook from the expert of an expert of an expert, right? For example, if you want to have a research method book, go to Bryman and Bell, go to Zygmunt, go to Sekaran and Bugge. This Sekaran and Bugge is like must-have books if you are doing research method. So by this, at least you have two. I'm not saying one. At least you have two of these three books. If you are doing statistic or econometrics, excuse me, you have to at least to have. If you ask me, if you are not from accounting and finance, buy this book, Basic Econometrics. If you're from accounting and finance, buy these two books. I repeat, if you're from accounting and finance, buy Basic Econometrics and Introductory Econometrics from Gujarat and Porter and Jeffrey Wooldridge. If you're from non-accounting, let's say you're from marketing, strategic management, organizational behavior, you just need this book, Basic Econometrics. One thing. So when you still remember when your examiner asks you, okay, have you tested the normality test? normality test. Can you ignore the normality test? This book can help you to answer that question. Is it important to test normality test, heterokedacity test? What else? Autocorrelation. What is the difference between autocorrelation and serial correlation? Why in some research they test the unit root, some research they don't test unit root. You have to test this one. So if I ask you, okay, a very you know sometimes examiner ask you to, not only because they want to know, but sometimes they want to test you. So because of that, when they test you, why you not test unit roots? Of course, you cannot say why your question is so silly. If you can answer that right, because you already understand about it, you can say that, okay, I don't test unit root because I don't have super race relationship, blah blah blah, and so on. Right? But you need this basic econometrics book. And for the advanced persons, advanced econometrics, not person, econometrics, you can buy causal inference. And the good news is this book is free online. Causal inference is free. If you want to go to PLSM, I still say that this book from Joseph Hare is still the best one. I really like this book actually. It's still the best one. And you remember my equation? Structural versus simultaneous equation. In this book, they will define it, introductory econometrics. Okay, so when you want to have a good ideas, good research method, and so on, you have to have a good reference. Start from your books. Start from the books. Books is an investment. I know buying the hard copy is very expensive, but you can buy also the soft copy in the PDF or in the EPUB if you have the Kindle. So much better. And now the Kindle books is very cheap. For example, the Kindle books for the Zygmunt, I think I pay only $10. Not, I don't think $10. I think less than $10. Yes, and so on. And now if you go to Shopee or Tokopedia, they even sell so many PDF books that you really need it. The second part is, this is the one that I have to show to you, is about the TOC alerts. If you still remember, I keep telling this in all my webinar, all my talks. If a student or researcher want to find an ideas, you have to do the TOC alerts strategy. If you still remember, like Atta Halilintar, Rafi, Ahmad, and Nagita, Safina, they keep saying that don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like, right? And because if you do that, when you open the YouTube, their video will appear in the home of your YouTube. You can do the same things for the journal, which is we call as table of content alerts, which is TOC alerts. So you go to the journal that you really want to, the journal that become your benchmark or the best journal in your field, like in finance, let's say Journal of Finance. You also can do subscribe, submit, subscribe, comment, and like the YouTube. How? You go to the get content alerts here, you click and follow the procedure. So every time there's a new paper published in Journal of Finance, it will go to your email. Only the title. Of course, you cannot download the paper, but you at least you know what kind of title now in finance area. Okay. So this I stop share here. I give you the example. Wait. Let's say I give you another example of Journal of Financial Economics. Share screen. Yes, this one. Okay, I share this screen. So let's say you want Journal of Financial Economics as your one of your benchmark. All right, this is a journal of. So if you want, every time there's a new paper, a recent article here, go to your email saying that, oh, there's a new paper published in our journal. The title is this, the title is this and this. All right. So you can do is you go to the content alert, this one. You click this one, and then you need to follow all the process. All right, one is it, or it's same thing. Corporate finance is the same. Issue alert or get content alert. That's why you just Control F, put alert, and then so every time there's a new title, it will go to your email. Like mine, it will go to ray_bram@yahoo.com and so on and so forth. All right. This is one example about the get content alert. And then usually I got my idea from the get content alert. The example, there's one paper published in Leadership Quarterly, entitled, the title is CEO narcissisms and compensations. So when I see the title, and then it's very interesting, and then I benchmark that paper. So I will make I will make the same the benchmark means similar topic, which is narcissistic CEO and earning management, the one that published in Q2 Scopus, which is Journal of Management and Governance. The ideas comes from there. So you can do that. Wait, I have to go back. How to go back to, all right, this one. This is what we call as TOC alert. So please do so. You go to the get content alert, any type of journal but please remember, it has to be high rank journal. For example, you have 50 top journals in our faculty and economy and business, no matter that you are HR, operations, finance, accounting, economics, what else? Economics, and so on and so forth. These are the top journal. So follow, you can do this get content alert to this journal, but how many is many? How many are many is, for myself, I make 5. I have 5. I have the strategic management journal. I really, even though I'm finance lecturer, I really love paper from strategic management journal. That's really good. Journal business ethics, because if you are from accounting and finance, business ethics usually discuss about CSR. And then I have I have content alert from Journal of Finance. Of course, you're from finance. I have content alert from business venturing, right? Because now the entrepreneurship changed to the startup and digital economics. So business venturing, many of them, they discuss about this kind of research. And then the other one is the Leadership Quarterly. So that's the journal that I follow. It's up to you. Depends on yourself which journal that you want to follow to get the content alert, and then your idea will get from that. And then who knows, there are certain research that close to your research, which is you can use it. Or please remember this one also, the main reference for your research is also important. Like the questions just now is really good questions. If you still remember, if your main reference, I'm not saying the additional reference, I'm talking about only the main reference, not the supportive reference. Your main reference, please make sure it's come from the top publisher, as Mr. Denny just asked just now. If your benchmark comes from not good publisher, the result will be very bad. I have to tell you, the result will be so bad. Sorry, so bad. For example, Sage, Emerald, Elsevier, Springer, Taylor and Francis, Wiley, Blackwell, Palgrave, Macmillan, Routledge, IEEE. You can choose from this as your main reference. How about MDPI? Okay. I know there is not an MDPI is now changing from a predatory, now become a good journal, a good publisher. Yeah. Now they become a better publisher, like Hindawi also now become a better publisher. Yeah, if you want to choose MDPI or Hindawi, it's up to you. Nothing wrong with that. Who knows? I know now it's a big fan from MDPI or Hindawi, but if you ask my personal opinion, for the main references, please stick on this journal, for this publisher first. And in fact, that for your main reference, just choose from this journal. If you cannot find from this journal, go from this journal. Go from journal from this publisher. If you still cannot find from this publisher, then what to do? Worst come to worst, you have to go to MDPI or Hindawi. But I do not believe a paper that published in Hindawi or MDPI not yet published in Elsevier or Taylor and Francis or Emerald. Okay, that is my personal opinion. The worst case is if you go to the predatory journal. Do not ever use predatory journal as your main reference. That's one thing. Second, please avoid. I use word please avoid. Yeah? Please avoid national journal as your main reference. Please avoid national journal as your main reference. You can use it as your supportive reference or additional reference, but do not use it as your main reference. Another thing is that I can tell you is about the Twitter just now. If you want to find ideas, you can follow. If you do not have Twitter, please make your Twitter now. You can follow. I'm not saying that it's wrong for you to follow, for example, Jokowi, for example, or Mahfud MD, or who else, or Raditya Dika, Pocong, Arif Muhammad. Nothing wrong with that. It's up to you. Yeah, it's not wrong, but please add also the top authors from your reference. I see just now that many there are students doing financial literacy. If you are doing financial literacy, make a Twitter account. Anna Maria Lusardi, of course, I bet you know who's Anna Maria Lusardi, because retirement planning financial literacy is coming from paper of Mitchell, Lusardi, and Kramer. You still remember? So follow her in the Twitter. And many of Lusardi, of course, not always. Anna Maria Lusardi is still a human. Not always she tweet about education. Sometimes she tweets something funny things or something political things, is up to her. But at least you gain knowledge from her. Lisa Kramer, Jeffrey Woolrich is an outlier, right? Remember the book that I showed to you just now, Jeffrey Woolrich here? Jeffrey Woolrich is also in the Twitter, and the good thing of Jeffrey Woolrich, he always answer your questions that you face problem. But don't forget that you say, I already read your book and I do not understand. I already read your book. So what is your opinion about mediations panel using PLSM? You try that one, because I have tried it. So, but I do not tag Woolrich. I tag Marcus Starstedt, the PLSM one, and then she referred me to one professor that now I engage with her in German also about PLSM in panel data. Or you can follow the economic and finance from Elsevier. Emerald also have, Sage also have, Springer also have, Inder Science also have, MDPI also have, Hindawi also have. You can follow them. This is the only example. Or the Stata. You can also follow the Stata and so on and so forth. Just follow the Twitter account from them, then you can get a new knowledge from them. Yeah, most likely. And for example, nowadays, I don't know, you are following about difference in difference method. So difference and difference method become a huge debate between Woolrich and Santana in the Twitter, because they're debating about the effectiveness of difference and two-way effects in the panel data. And they're also debating, Jeffrey Woolrich debating about the common mistake in panel data. For example, if your hostman said that you're doing random effect, should you ignore the fixed effect? Previously, I thought that we can ignore the fixed effect, right? But Jeffrey Woodard says wrong. I just know from him, and then he showed the paper and the books. And another person is Scott Cunningham. It's really good, so you can follow them for the good things. And if you're doing behavioral finance, there Lisa Kramer. You're doing Kramer. What else? You can tell.
Yes,
You can.
I think is A, yeah, secondary risk with we should be along with the primary risk and respond. Then if there is some impact from, I mean, the secondary risk coming
Pardon?
from the primary, yeah, is it? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The risk that may happen dependent through this the primary one.
Okay. I think. All right. So yeah. So anyway, so where to find the research gap? I thought there's a question just now from Mr. Brian. I think it's another things. So conclude where to find the research gap. There's a tip from me. Usually, yeah, this is the most common answer. They will say that, oh, why you don't go to conclusion sections of an article, and then you check that what is the limitation and the suggestion future issue. Is it correct? Or you can say you can say also
the primary risk is that the COVID test. So response for that
okay.
Yeah,
I think
have the party.
yeah.
excuse me, Mr. Brian, maybe you can mute.
That is a response.
Yeah, thank you.
It's okay. So the another thing is that you have to you can do is either you can find it from the introduction of an article. Anyway, to find a research gap from an article, maybe there are many ways to do that. Some say that they go to conclusion sections. For example, you go find the conclusion section, find what the suggestion for future research. But and some say that you find from the introduction sections of an article. Or some say that you just go to meditations and find the idea how to get a research gap. For me, the answer is that each person has different strategy, different way to find a research gap. And it's again back to your reading. The more you're reading, the more you get the information. The less you're reading, the less you got the information. If you want to find a research gap from an article, read from the introduction sections. So let's say you want to know the research gap from one article from Anna Maria Lusardi about financial literacy. You just need to go to the introduction sections. You read carefully. Don't read once, twice, or 3 times. No, read so many times. You understand what is the research gap from the introduction sections. And then you find, okay, Anna Maria Lusardi paper for financial literacy and stock market participations. There's one paper from Van Roch and Anna Maria Lusardi 2001 about financial literacy and stock market participations. You can read it many times until you get it what is the problem. And then you can replicate the strategy of Anna Maria Lusardi and Van Roch writing about it, and then you can do it for yours. You can also find a research gap in the conclusion section if they mention what is the suggestion of future research. But but you have to be careful. Why? Sometimes if they suggest, okay, find a CO duality as the moderation, maybe it's not applicable for your research context. Right. For example, in Indonesia, we do not have CO duality system. And when your research talk about CO duality, then it's wrong already. In Indonesia, we know dual tier system. And when one paper suggests dual tier system for next research, and then someone in Malaysia or maybe let's say in Malaysia, they want to apply this dual tier system, it's not applicable. They do not understand what is what in Indonesia, the commissioner president, president komisaris, the commissioner, the board of commissioner, and then they only know about the executive and non-executive system. So if Malaysians want to, they read your paper and you suggest for future research, oh, future research have to do the dual tier system. And then I'm from Malaysia, I'm doing that, totally my research is wrong. So what I mean is you have to be careful when you read the conclusion sections of an article, because sometimes what they offer in the conclusions is not applicable for your country or your research context. I give you an example like COVID-19 travel bans. COVID-19 travel bans in province level is only applicable for Australia and Indonesia. And then you want to do it, a researcher from China want to do it, they cannot apply that. Why? Because in China, they have centralized policy. In Indonesia, before the PKPM, in Kalimantan Barat, they do not impose the PSBB. South Sumatra, they impose PSBB. My hometown, they not impose the PSBB until the end of the year of 2020. Until then, they change again about the PKPM things, and then it's decentralized. So if you make suggestions, if you read paper from Narayan et al. 2020 in Finance Research later about the impact of COVID-19 travel bans and stock market, for example, do you think you can apply it in all countries? If you are from Indonesia, yes. If you're from Malaysia, how can you impose it? Because you only have two different policies in Sarawak, in Sabah, in Peninsular. In Peninsular, all the states have the same uniformity. So my point is that you have to be careful in extending the conclusion sections of an article. It doesn't mean that when they suggest, please do this, future research do this, future research do that, it means, oh, I found a research gap. No, it's not a research gap, because sometimes it's not applicable. It's not applicable. And this is why I told you from the beginning, you have to check again with the prior knowledge. You have to check with is there any theory to explain it? Is there any empirical evidence to explain it? Is it the regulation is the same? If not, then you cannot replicate it. You cannot extend it. So where to find a research gap? Conclusion section of an article? Yes, but you have to be careful. Introduction of an article? Maybe, but that one is the research gap of that article. A meditation, who knows? Do you want to go to meditation, yoga? Who knows? You can have it. So my point is that I don't want, if you are my student, I will not say, go this article, look at the conclusion section. No. Why? Because maybe the conclusion section is not applicable for you, for your research context. It comes, sometimes it can comes from the fables or the folklore story. Those who are doing paper about herding, Christie and Huang, I forgot, 1990 or 2010, I forgot, Christie and Huang. Christie and Huang is one paper about herding behavior. Herding behavior, for those who are not familiar about herding behavior is a behavior that one investor follow another investor. So if you still remember the Belfin cases in Indonesia, that he said, okay, everyone, tomorrow I will buy this one and that one, in the take profit at 20% in this price and so on. If you follow Belfin, it means you are doing herding. And the case of herding from the Christie and Huang, I think 1990, if I'm not mistaken, they got the idea from the case of the story of Pied Piper of Hamelin. If you still remember, this is one story or fairy tales about there's a Pied Piper that go to city of Hamelin, and the mayor said that, can you take away all the rats, and then this Pied Piper drown all the rats to the lake, and then the mayor don't want to pay him, and then he go yeah, all the children follow him and he drowned to the lake. I know this is a sad story, but this is a fairy tale. So he got the idea from there. Or there's a story about the goose that laid a golden eggs. If you still remember this one, a farmer got one goose that have a golden eggs every day. And then this guy think that, oh, why not I just kill the goose and then take all the eggs from inside from the goose. So he killed this goose, but no eggs. Of course, how come you got the eggs is not from inside the goose? And this research, the idea from David Lipson's making a paper about hyperbolic discounting. Those who are doing personal finance, I think you know what is hyperbolic discounting. Hyperbolic discounting is because you want instant result, you sacrifice the long-term benefit. And even the title of the paper from David Lipson is Golden Eggs Behavior of Investor. Golden eggs behavior. What is golden eggs? Investor, they just want to get the instant result. Why? Because they have hyperbolic discounting, which is caused by, we call as representative bias. Adam and Eve, the story of Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve is it's very easy to explain in behavioral finance. We call as panoeconomics. Why? It's the same story like the golden eggs. Because they're not sure whether they got the long-term benefit or not, they eat the apple, the coolie. Right. Same cases. Sometimes, maybe if you still remember the story of John Nash. John Nash is a Nobel economic winner. He won about for his research in the game theory research area, prisoner dilemma. John Nash is also very famous because his thesis is only 38 pages, 30 something pages. Yeah, very thin one. So how John Nash got the idea? John Nash got the idea, if you watch the movie of Beautiful Mind by Russell Crowe, The Beautiful Mind, John Nash get the idea for his thesis, which is in the later won a Nobel Prize, when he got stressed because his topic is not good enough. He invited by his friend to the bar, and then they go to the bar, and then he found out about the competitions dilemma in the game theory, where if you watch the movie, there's 4 ladies. One lady is very beautiful, and then he argued that how to get the beautiful lady. If he go directly to the lady, then there's a chance not get the lady because he's ugly. If he go to another lady to make the beautiful lady attract to him, but it has a chance the lady doesn't want him again because the beautiful lady thinks that he's the second choice. And then from that he go with the classical theory of free market from Adam Smith. And then from that movie you can see that how John Nash come from one idea or simply from a book. So what is my point? A research idea can come from anywhere, but the important part is that this one, you have to see first about the prior knowledge. Is it any theory to support it? Remember the John Nash just now? He said, this theory, if you still remember the Adam Smith laissez-faire, the most beautiful lady will not take him because she feel that she's become the second choice. See, there's always a prior knowledge to support your ideas, or from the books, from the reference. Again, the reference you can comes from this or this one. So why is research gap is important? I already told you this one. It's important because it's the DNA of your research. It's the scientific process and design. I already give you the example of Astronacci. Why many people debate about it? Because he failed to show the research gap. What is the important part? And for publication, this to answer the questions from Mr. Denny just now. Believe me, as an editor, when I read a paper, research gap in the introductions will decide 70% of the whole process of review. If I read your introductions and then I found there's no research gap, I will simply reject. In IJBS, we have 70 to 90 papers per month. So from 70 to 90 papers per month, I cannot simply give to the reviewer for them to review it. Why? Because I don't want to bother them with a very simple paper. So I have to see, okay, before go to the reviewer, I make sure there is a research gap. If there's a research gap, interesting title, send to the reviewer. What's next process? The next process is that if I'm the reviewer, I read again. Is there any research gap or not? If I cannot fill the research gap, as a reviewer, the second sections, your literature review, your methodology, your result, how good is your PLS SAM? What else? Your CB SAMs, your RAP PLS, your panel data, your GMM, your two-state least square, your Poisson regressions. No matter how good is your result, because you give a bad impressions from the introductions, as a reviewer, I will just find a mistake, a very simple mistake. I will say, no, the reference is wrong. The theory is not good. The English is not good. The methodology is wrong. I recently have one review because the introduction is bad. The reviewer said that the hypothesis is bad. When I read the hypothesis, no, hypothesis is not bad. Methodology is correct. But why this reviewer say bad? And when I read the introductions, because the introduction is confusing. This is why the next process, when the reviewer read it, they just simply find a simple mistake, a very simple mistake. Reference is wrong. No latest reference. Can you imagine? Because they just make latest reference for your rejections. You are doing, for example, GMM for cross-sectional, which is applicable for your endogeneity. But because the reviewer just hate your paper, they said GMM is not applicable for this research. Why? Because your research gap in the introductions is confusing. This is why from the beginning I told you that for publications, research gap or problem statement is the impressions management for your paper. When you have a bad impressions in introductions, everything is bad. Okay.
Excuse me, Dr. Ray.
Yeah.
Maybe can we go to the question and answer session?
Can.
Yes, because our schedule is only until 3:30.
Oh, 3:30. Oh, I thought. All right.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think I just want to show this. Just skip through. So anyway, this is the current research gap in finance literature, cyber tech, using Twitter as sentiment, content analysis in the fintech, and insert tech development, doing text mining. We can discuss later on. The rise of zombie companies, and then this is old topic, but still 2021. Why? Because the research gap, how they write it is good, leverage, and then all faulty theories. Other topics that good for your research gap is non-traditional Islamic banking, non-traditional rural banking and cooperative, the kooperasi, cryptocurrency, intermediary asset pricing, green finance, and ESG. If you have topic in green finance, you can present it in the World Bank. If you have green finance topic, let me know, and not necessarily have to be your co-authors. But if you want to present it the World Bank, let me know, because World Bank always see authors or researchers can have paper about green finance or early warning system of fraud, distress, and zombie. So yeah, another tips how to write a research gap is you can write a tips by doing this table, or don't forget to write your ideas in one book. And the closing one for me is, yeah, anyway, Rome was not built in one night, right? So it has a process for that. Then I hope that you can learn something from this. That's all from me. Thank you. Sorry for that.
Thank you, Dr. Ray. Yeah, anyone, if you have any question, you can ask. So we still have around 15 minutes for the question and answer session. Yes, please. Anyone?
You can speak bahasa ya, if you
Boleh, boleh.
yeah.
Excuse me, Dr. Ray.
Ya.
But can in bahasa?
Boleh.
Terima kasih, luar biasa ini pencerahannya. Dan saya melihat poin terakhir tadi yang Dr. Ray sampaikan bahwa inti dari artikel yang diterima oleh yang bisa dipublis adalah di dalam introduction atau latar belakang yang gap risetnya itu sudah jelas. Jadi kalau di dalam introduction yang tidak jelas, kemungkinan untuk di rejectnya adalah besar. Nah, tadi sudah diberikan tips-tips yang luar biasa oleh Dr. Ray menurut kami. Kalau untuk kasus saya, Dr. Ray, saya tuh menulis kegiatan pemberdayaan yang ada di Papua dan Papua Barat. Dan di Indonesia sekarang ini dalam rangka implementasi Undang-Undang Desa, desa merupakan subjek pembangunan. Di dalamnya ada masyarakat desa. Sehingga desa diharapkan mampu mandiri dan masyarakatnya punya skill atau keterampilan yang mampu menjawab permasalahan yang dia miliki, sehingga desanya akan menunjukkan kinerja yang baik. Dari sisi itu, saya menggunakan teori yang meliputi skill masyarakat, yaitu oleh James Ive, kemudian kinerja itu Pine. Nah, dari analisis yang saya lihat berdasarkan observasi yang kebetulan saya punya program, kami diberi tugas untuk memberdayakan masyarakat di Papua dan Papua Barat, itu adalah problemnya pendidikan yang sangat rendah sehingga masyarakat tidak mampu mandiri. Banyak intervensi dari pusat, namun itu tidak ada manfaatnya. Dari penelitian saya, Dr. Ray, saya variabel-variabel yang saya gunakan adalah keterlibatan, kemudian motivasi dan pendidikan yang berpengaruh terhadap skill masyarakat yang dampaknya kepada kinerja kampung. Nah, dari permasalahan yang kami hadapi ternyata kami menambahkan yaitu kompetensi pendamping sebagai kebaharuan dan diharapkan dapat mempercepat proses untuk peningkatan kapasitas masyarakat di Papua Barat dengan meningkatkan skill mereka. Nah, mohon pencerahan Dr. Ray, gimana bisa, mudah-mudahan harapan saya adalah kebaharuan saya adalah lokasi yang memang betul-betul sangat remote, kemudian masyarakatnya memang mempunyai keunikan tersendiri dan perlu kehadiran pemerintah untuk wilayah Papua dan Papua Barat yang notabene sampai sekarang juga dia menduduki tingkat kemiskinan terendah di Indonesia, nomor 34 dan 33 Untuk itu mohon pencerahan, mudah-mudahan artikel saya bisa diterima oleh.
Boleh. Berarti ini Bu ya.
Siap.
Jadi
Ya.
saya jawab singkat aja Bu ya.
Terima
Jadi,
kasih.
Makasih Bu. Kalau dari jadi gini, ini enggak, kalau dari belajar dari penelitiannya yang Ibu bilang tadi, sebenarnya kita itu saya nggak bilang nggak boleh sih menghindari jualan kita itu adalah Papuanya atau pemerintahnya.
Oke.
Tapi Papua pemerintah dan regulasinya itu menjadi research konteks, jadi konteks untuk mengetes satu teorinya gitu. Jadi kalau kayak Ibu bilang tadi, sebenarnya yang kita jual itu adalah penting nggak sih pendampingan dalam memandirikan masyarakat kampung? Seberapa penting apa enggak? Kalau penting, kenapa penting? Dan itu yang harus ditampilkan. Jadi kalau kita jualannya Papua atau Papua Barat, Indonesia, itu nanti penelitian kita itu susah publishnya. Kalau saya ini cerita publish saja Bu ya, saya nggak cerita dengan tesis disertasi, bakal susah publishnya. Jadi ya ini satu masukan dari saya Bu ya. Jadi kalau dari itu yang pertama. Yang kedua, kalau yang research gap itu kalau menurut saya yang harus dimunculkan itu yang tadi Bu, antara teori dengan empirical atau empirical dengan empirical, tapi jangan ditunjukkan kenapa Indonesia itu penting, Papua itu penting. Kenapa? Karena Papua dan Indonesia itu nggak penting buat body of knowledge. Tapi Papua dan Indonesia itu penting sebagai konteks penelitian. Jadi misalnya gini, maksud saya gampangnya seperti ini Bu. Pendampingan terhadap memandirikan masyarakat kampung itu penting menurut teori ini dan ini. Oleh karena itu Ibu tes di Papua dan Papua Barat yang karakternya seperti ini. Itu ide dari saya. Baru kalau ini enggak untuk hanya Ibu sih, untuk ada yang beberapa yang hantar ke saya itu dalam menampilkan hasil penelitian. Saya boleh kasih tahu Anda ini Ramaya et al 2011 itu ada yang di Google Drive itu sebagai benchmark untuk kita cara menampilkan atau menyajikan hasil. Itu paling bagus. Ini terlepas dari pertanyaan Ibu ya Bu. Dan kalau saran saya Bu, penelitian Ibu kalau ngetesnya mau di Q1 atau Q2 saya buat di chat box, itu ada 2 jurnal yang sesuai dengan tema Ibu yang bisa juga jadi benchmark Ibu. Satu itu yang di Emerald, satu itu di community development. Tapi Bu, kalau boleh sih, kalau ini saran saya sih ya, kalau boleh jangan di-emphasize di Papuanya atau di Indonesianya, tapi emphasize kenapa mendampingi masyarakat di kampung itu penting, gitu sih Bu. Itu dari saya.
Terima kasih banyak Dokter Re, luar biasa ini kuncinya. Terima kasih. Terima kasih. Iya, kami perbaiki Dokter Re.
Siap.
Terima kasih. Berikutnya apabila ada pertanyaan lagi dipersilahkan Bapak Ibu. Terima kasih Bu Anastuti.
Terima kasih Ibu Ida fasilitasinya. Terima kasih Dokter.
Terima kasih. Silakan Ibu Hanifa.
Ya, terima kasih Ibu Ida. Thank you Dr. Ray. I have 2 questions. The first is about research gap. I want to ask if I found the research gap from article A. They give some indicator or dimension, and I mix with article B, which one is not have a clear indicator or dimension. It is we can call it research gap or not. This is first, and the second is before it I use the theory in generally, exactly such as TAM in see related between financial innovation and digitalization. Now my question is, if I use TAM, and what about and how can I make maybe middle range theory in financial view, so it have related. It's not about what is TAM in generally. I mean theory in generally, but it's pursuing to maybe in finance view. So it's clear my related variable. Thank you, Dr. Ray.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, for the first questions, right? You can. This is the common mistake actually done by the PhD candidate. We've been through that also. You cannot simply mix two indicator from two different article. It's a very common mistake. So for example, if one paper doing this indicator, then you have to follow that one. That's it. If you want to follow another paper, then you follow that one. That's it. Whether the indicator or the items is applicable or not, that one is the role of validity test. That's for sure. So you cannot choose, for example, I like this indicator, I take it, I like that indicator, and then I take it. You cannot do cherry picking in research. That's wrong. And in fact, that when we call it in econometrics, we call it is identification strategy. If we want to choose an indicator for our research, it has to be theoretical based. Why? Because your research is quantitative. Unless your research is qualitative, then you don't need theoretical or previous research that have done it. That's the argument. And another most common mistake from PhD candidate is that, let's say TPB say that subjective norm, perceived behavioral control, and then attitude toward behavior are the determinant to the intentions, and then you drop one variable, that is also wrong. Or I give example in TAM. TAM, for example, perceive of easy to use or perceive of usefulness, and then you want to drop the perceive of usefulness because it's not reliable to your research context, is also wrong. Or let's say in one paper, in Ramaya paper, for example, they use one items at 5 items of perceive of usefulness, and from my paper I use 4 items, and then you mix it. That one is also wrong. So in choosing indicator, which is famously known as identification strategy, it has a scientific process for that. That's the answer for it. How about the TAM? Yeah, this is the problem with TAM and with finance. Finance theory less likely go to the individual unit analysis. It's very rare to find unit analysis is individual. And most likely, if you go to the individual, then it will go to financial planning. For example, the life cycle, and then the precautionary saving, and so on. And yeah, you can mix it, but you have to make it logically accepted that how TAM will be engaged in finance. My concern is this actually. If I'm the examiner or the promoter of the thesis, your research is about intentions to use the digital payment, the adoption of digital payment. So how finance or how this research contribute to enrich the finance literature? Which type of finance literature that this research want to enrich? Is it financial planning? Is it about what? The literacy? Is it about behavioral finance or what? And it will be very hard unless as I told you that earlier, I have one student using TPB, and then she mix it with financial literacy, which is intention to repay loan. It depends on the financial literacy, for example. But intention to adopt software or intention to adopt digital payment, I don't see it will be a finance research. Maybe it will be hard. I don't say it's impossible, but maybe it's very hard for you later on to engage with mid-range theory and so on and so forth. But it's if you can try, If I am you, if you ask me how to make this become a finance research, I will say that the intentions to use and impulsive buying. For example, if I have Link Aja or OVO or Samsung Pay, will it make people more impulsive buying compared those who doesn't have it? There's one research about this. Oh, the name is he's from Harvard. The name is Indian name. I will find it for you later on. It's about the denominations and purchasing. But in your case, of course, you're not using denomination. Denomination means that if you still remember, in Indonesia you have 10.000, and then how about if from 10.000 becomes 10? Will it change the people perceptions in purchasing or not? So maybe you can do the same things. Will people make more consumptions if they adopt the fintech adoption or something like that? I will find it later on. I will put on the Google Drive the paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ray.
Miss Ati, maybe you can mute. Excuse me, Miss Ati. Yeah, thank you. Okay, Dr. Remy, because the time is already 3:30, but it's a really good discussion, and then we have a lot of knowledge from you about how to make a good research, or how to find a better research gap or appropriate research gap. And everyone have a lot of question how to improve their research. So this is very good opportunity, and this is a very good sharing today. So thank you so much, Dr. Ray. And then maybe we hope like we have another chance, like make another seminar to discuss more. But today our time, the schedule is only until 3:30. So we need to finish today, and thank you so much to Dr. Ray and everyone for your attention. And then we close this seminar, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Dr. Ray.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ray.
Thank you, Dr.
Ray.
Wida, terima kasih.
Ya,
Bu Risma,
sama-sama.
terima kasih Pak.
Terima
Terima kasih,
Terima kasih,
Dr. Ray.
Nadia.
Thank you,
Bu
Dr.
Risma.
Ray.
Thank you very much for Rayendra.
Bapak Ibu yang belum mengisi form daftar hadir dan juga form kepala. Terima kasih.
Okay.